task.
Dad, how soon are we gonna eat? I've got to get to Lauren's house to work on our science project.
All right, it's almost ready now. As soon as your mom comes in, we can eat.
Hello?
And here she is. Hi, hon.
Hi.
Hi, Mom.
Katie, will you take these, please? You would not believe the day I had today.
One for the record books, eh?
Oh, God.
Oh, here, let me take it.
Thank you. Well, let's just say it started off with a bang when I spilled coffee in the car, and it went downhill from there.
Yeah, what happened?
Well, I almost got hit in the parking lot on the way into work. Things were nonstop on the floor today, and in the process, I wrenched my back. Then I went to the supermarket on the way home, and some kid ran over my foot with a cart. To top it all off, I blew right through a stop sign and almost ran into another car.
Jeez, you're lucky you didn't end up with more than a backache.
Oh, yeah, I feel real lucky.
No, I'm serious, Linda. I mean, feeling rushed and tired and frustrated can lead to things like missed stop signs and a lot more. You don't intend to get hurt, but you're rushing, for instance, and you wrench your back, or you spill coffee all over the car.
Well, that sounds right. What got you thinking about all this?
Ray, his plant started a new type of safety training, and he's been telling me about it. It's a simple concept, really, but it makes a lot of sense. And believe it or not, it's beginning to change the way I do a lot of things now.
Thanks for making dinner. That's good.
Sure. Oh, Linda, that's hot.
I wasn't thinking. Yeah, I'm all right.
Yeah, well, see, that's exactly what I was talking about. Right? You've had a tough day. You're beat. And because you're tired, you didn't stop to think that the dish is hot. Well, there are actually 4 states or conditions that cause us to make mistakes that lead to injuries. Rushing, fatigue, frustration, and complacency.
Rushing. Ooh, there's plenty of that on my floor. Never enough hands, especially today.
And you were probably trying to do too many things at once to save time. I've seen you do that here at home.
I thought that was something all moms do, naturally.
Maybe.
Here, set the table, honey.
But Linda, when you're trying to do even more things at once, or moving faster than you normally do, that's when you're likely to make a mistake, and those mistakes can get you hurt.
So rushing is just moving faster than I normally go.
Basically. And rushing is a big problem for a lot of people these days. We're all so busy thinking about everything we have to do that we don't always have our mind on the tasks at hand or the surrounding conditions. Take this morning. You said you almost got hit in the parking lot. Were you rushing?
I was running late. I glanced down at my watch, then looked in my bag for my ID card when this guy came tearing around the corner. Fortunately, he swerved out of the way before I got hit.
And you tell me to be careful, Mom.
You were both probably more concerned about getting into work than thinking about what was going on at that moment in the parking lot, and you weren't looking for other cars. Mind not on task and eyes not on task. When you combine the two, you increase the risk of getting hurt. And when you're rushing, it's easier to unintentionally move into the line of fire, like an oncoming car. And rushing can also impact decision making.
Well, sure. That's how people rationalize things like speeding or weaving in and out of traffic like a maniac. So, does this Safe Start thing have a way to stop you from rushing before you make a mistake?
Well, when you notice you're rushing, your first inclination should be to slow down. And if you absolutely can't slow down, use it as a trigger to remind yourself to keep your mind on task, your eyes on what you're doing, avoid the line of fire, and look for things that could cause you to lose your balance, traction, or grip. In the long run, it's usually quicker and cheaper to perform a task at a safe speed.
Hey, Ray, come on in. How you doing?
Pretty good, thanks. I thought Pete would be looking for this.
Oh, thanks. Go on in. So, I hear you're the new safety officer for the neighborhood.
Pete's been talking to you about Safe Start.
Yeah, and I gotta admit, it makes a lot of sense. So what was that last state you mentioned? Complacency?
Mm-hmm. And that can be a tough one to recognize because it doesn't come about overnight. It usually happens after you've been doing something for days, weeks, even years.
Oh, I don't know if it's complacency, but you spilled.
Oh, well, it's complacency and a case of eyes not on task.
You know, come to think of it, that's probably why I spilled my coffee in the car this morning.
It could be. Do you always have a cup of coffee on your way into work?
Every morning. It's part of my routine.
Well, complacency goes right along with mind not on task. See, over time, you might be less concerned about a hazard. A cup of hot coffee, for instance. After a while, you don't really think about it. And with complacency, you can make more than one critical error at a time, like mind and eyes not on task. Especially if you're dealing with something like high pressure, high voltage, or high speed. Suppose that cup of coffee you had this morning was really hot. You could have ended up with a pretty nasty burn.
Or maybe win a $3 million lawsuit.
Seriously, Linda, you could have had an accident.
You know, I bet a lot of people become complacent about driving over time. I mean, think about it. When you first learn to drive, your eyes are glued to the road. It has your complete attention. And then after a couple years, you don't even think about it. It's automatic.
Over time, people perceive hazards as less risky.
And the unfortunate thing is that after an accident, it's easy to see that it was caused by complacency, but before, it's just not always obvious.
Well, if you can't easily recognize complacency and self-trigger on it, how do you prevent injury?
Well, once again, it goes back to taking a look at previous accidents and errors and trying to figure out what went wrong with them. It's not as easy to spot as rushing, fatigue, or frustration, but just looking for it can make you more aware and less likely to go on autopilot. Probably the best way to fight complacency is to look for patterns, the states to errors in other people. This will give you something you can actively do. And recognize that you will become complacent about some task over time if you don't do something about it. The workbook will give you more detail on complacency, as well as rushing, fatigue, and frustration. You'll also find other ideas for preventing the errors caused by these states. When you're finished, come back to the videotape for several scenarios related to the topic.